Hi, my name is Serena Low, and I'm the trauma-informed introvert coach. I'm about to be on the online prosperity show with Prosper Taruvinga, where we talk about the 5 keys to going from a quiet achiever to a quiet warrior. And I share my journey of how I deviated from the path of following and conforming to norms and expectations of family, authority, and culture, and how to thrive in an extrovert-oriented culture as a quieter person.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have the incredible Serena Low, who is a trauma-informed introvert coach on a mission to transform quiet achievers into quiet warriors. Now, Serena, how are you doing today?
I am so pumped for this interview, Prosper, and coming from an introvert, that's saying something.
Oh, I was actually going to do the whole warrior dance and, start really welcoming you to the show. But hold on, I'm going to wait until the end for that. And for those that are meeting Serena for the very first time, like I mentioned, she's an introvert herself. I don't know if we're ever going to get a word out of her today on this episode, but from what I've experienced, she comes with a wealth of knowledge. She actually enjoys networking and hosting in-person events. So for those that think, oh, I don't think I'll be able to ever do that, I think Serena is going to have a few strategies up her sleeve so she can teach us how to be, do, and have businesses that are profitable and enjoyable. And apparently sometimes she occasionally nods off at social gatherings that go past 9 p.m. So I'm going to be very careful to make sure this episode doesn't go long, just in case would have to reach out and wake her up, just to get a word out of her. But I digress. Serena, I really appreciate you being on the show today. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, especially what drives you as a coach, and how did you get started on this mission to help other quiet achievers become quiet warriors?
Thanks for having me, Prosper. It's a great time to be here to talk about what introverts do in the world. And sometimes we think that it has to be a linear journey. Something big happened or something didn't happen, and so I'm on this journey. But sometimes it's also a series of little detours from the original path. We may have started off in life with a certain perception or expectation of who we are supposed to be when we grow up. And usually that idea is very different from our childhood idea of what we wanted to be. So somewhere along the way, usually after we start school, parents, teachers, they will start giving us little hints of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And if we go down a certain path, they might encourage us and say, yeah, that's a really good thing to do. Oh, what a good girl you are, what a good boy you are. And if we deviate and suggest or show signs that we are interested in certain other things that are not so socially acceptable or culturally acceptable, they might discourage us and say, that's a really bad idea. You keep going like this, you'll end up as a garbage collector. And so you get these ideas from a very young age about what is good, what is acceptable, what I should be, what will please my parents, what my teachers will approve of. And eventually it's, how do I keep up with my peers, or how do I find my place in society in a way that makes me look successful, that makes me look like I've done my best, that makes me look like I've achieved something with my life. And at some point, I think all of us go through that phase, whether you call it a midlife crisis or a crossroads of some sort. Usually I've noticed it happen from about 35 onwards, when people start to question themselves. What am I doing here? Why did I choose this path? Is this all there is? What else am I meant to do with my life? What if there is something else out there for me? And that's when it gets dangerous, because if you've been on a certain set path and you've built your life around that path, and then all your decisions have been made in such a way to align and fall into place with that and be consistent with that, you've built an identity around that. And then suddenly to have to think, who am I? can shake everything up. It shakes the foundations and makes you question yourself. And so there is a bit of an identity crisis going on. And that's pretty much what happened with me at that age. After 11 years of practicing law and doing what do you call, following the path and doing all the right things and ticking all the boxes and doing it from a place of wanting that external validation, wanting to say, look, I can prove that I studied hard. I can prove that I succeeded. I can prove that I followed the rules. Therefore, I deserve a good life, a successful life. And then you realize, hang on, but what is success to me? Me personally, not my parents, not my teachers, not what the authorities say. And then as you go through different seasons of life, you also realize your definitions change because your circumstances change, your values change, and who you are as a person changes. And then you take on certain other roles. You might become a parent. And then you look at yourself, you look at your children through different eyes again. And so it becomes another invitation to recreate your identity. And you realize that path, that old path no longer fits. I actually want to go and explore. I want to find out what else there is. And so that's what I've been doing, adventuring or going on a quest, trying to find out if it's possible for a quiet achiever who has been following the rules and staying on the fringe and being a good person and minding their own business. Is it possible for such a person to learn to speak up, to learn to be a leader, to learn to take action, instead of just staying on the sidelines and being the observer? So that's the quest, that's the mission.
Fantastic. I quite like that. And what you have just brought about is a series of things that a lot of people are going through. First of all, kids are growing up following other people's dreams or following other people's perception of what success is without properly defining it for themselves, which then leads to, that disconnect, that whole imposter syndrome that a lot of people are facing is because they have grown up wanting to be something else and they're being told by society to become something else. And, that disconnect is now, what a lot of people are failing to bridge. And indulge me if you can here, Serena. I blame Hollywood or society for all of this because Hollywood gives you the impression that you go to kindergarten, and then you go to high school. From high school, you meet your high school love, and then you go to university together. Then you get your first job at a law firm together, and then you get a promotion or you make partner at a law firm, and then you have 2 or 3 kids and a puppy. Then you get sick, then you die, all in a space of 35 minutes plus commercials.
Wow. We have a lot to lay at the door of Hollywood. It's all their fault.
So tell me, what was the 11 years being in the legal space like for you?
It was a wonderful time of learning, but it was also very challenging because I was fresh out of uni. I was following the path. And at the time, we didn't have career coaches, career counselors to the degree that we have these days. And there's also the cultural aspect, which I think is important to highlight. So if you've come from the childhood conditioning or the upbringing where it's very much rules oriented, it's very much about following the norms, it's very much about respecting authority. It's no longer then about my dreams. It's also about, can I find my place in society and can I stay there and not do anything that jeopardizes that, anything that would be risky, anything that might possibly make me or my family lose face. Now, this losing face concept, it's quite unique, I think, to the Chinese culture. It's very much about appearances. It's very much about how do I look and how do I present myself in front of others and how do I compare with others. So for instance, growing up, parents might say to their child, why aren't you as good as auntie so and so's child? Look at him, he's like so outstanding. He plays the violin, he plays the piano, he's a great athlete, and he gets A's in all his subjects. And then you grow up resenting this cousin so and so, who is like so smart and too smart for their own good. And I think parents don't have that kind of awareness sometimes of what they're actually doing to the children when they do this kind of comparison. It's more to motivate, or at least that's what they will tell the children. I think you can do better. You're not living up to your potential. But then what the child hears is, I'm not good enough.
Mm.
Me as I am right now is not enough for my parents. So if I want to please my parents, if I want them to be proud of me, I must always do more. So I remember back in grade 4, getting second place in class. And when I got home, the comment I got was, you were complacent. That's why you came in second. And that stayed with me for decades. It sounds funny when you look back on it. Like, why would you put so much energy into a comment that was randomly made when you were 10? But there are people out there, and in my conversations with clients too, there is a little bit of that childhood conditioning that carries on in decades later and shows up in adulthood in all kinds of dysfunctional ways. And it shows up in the way we hold ourselves back, the way we constantly question our worth, the way we doubt whether we're good enough, the imposter syndrome you talked about just now. There is this constant fear and anxiety and insecurity around, how do I compare? How do I look? Oh, so and so is better than me. They look so much more successful. They have the bigger house, or their family is so that the children are so such high achievers, and mine are like just getting through school. And these sorts of stories that started back in childhood have a way of showing up unless we do some inner work to heal them. So I think it's really important also to acknowledge and to connect the dots looking backwards to see what is the root cause of all these insecurities and fears. And it's not because necessarily that we had bad parents. It's more that was the thinking at the time. There was the awareness that at the time. Parents were also doing their best. They also had a difficult, challenging time being parents and holding down full-time jobs and maybe going through financial crises, and other things were going on in their adult life. And not everyone has the tools and the resources, as some of us may now have, to be able to make those better decisions. And so we accidentally or unintentionally perpetuate some kind of trauma on our children with a good intention of inspiring them, motivating them, helping them live up to their potential by saying certain things to them. But then how the child receives it is not within the parent's control. Some children could be very resilient. Some children, these comments might just bounce off them. And some children will take it to heart. The ones who are perhaps more sensitive, will keep ruminating and pondering and thinking about this for years and years and keep it inside themselves. And then one day it explodes in some way.
Fantastic. Because from what you're saying, obviously, so many parents, and I don't think it's maybe of Asian sort of cultures or communities. I think it's across the board, but maybe in different flavors. All right. Um, in my own space as well, we would have been brought up. There was only 3 or 4 careers that your parents would be wanting you to do. You would either be a doctor, a lawyer, or a pilot. You know what I mean? If you become an accountant, then you're like this person who's serving everybody else tea. And it was just all those careers that were sort of looked down upon. And if you worked for the government, then they just thought you were lazy enough to just want security. And it was just one of those sort of aspirations that our parents would have had, and now they impose that on their families and things of that nature. So you went ahead and you got your family to lose face because, whoa, what are you doing now? All this woo-woo stuff.
I know, it's a shocker. That's why I don't tell them what I do.
Tell me, what was the conversation like when you decided, okay, I'm hanging up my barrister certificate. I'm no longer becoming a lawyer. You guys can now look at me being a coach.
Well, fortunately, I didn't immediately go into coaching. I actually went through what I might call an emotional and spiritual wilderness because I didn't have a plan B. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be next. All I knew was what I didn't want to be at the time. And I didn't want to still be doing law when I was 60 and then reach retirement and look back and wonder, could I have done something else? And realizing that I couldn't turn back the time. And so I thought, I think I better get off this hamster wheel now while I can and explore my possibilities. And so I waited till the last possible moment until I absolutely could not tell my family. And at the time, I think I was also my little one was maybe about 3 years old. So my excuse was that I was taking some time off to be with my family, to look after my child. And that was acceptable. That was acceptable up to a point. And then, after a couple of years, as the children grow older, then the question comes back again. So what are you doing with your life? Well, what have you done with your law degree? Like, why have you wasted your life and your studies and everything and all that, all those years of preparing?
Wow.
And it will always come back to that. That value is tied to what I can achieve academically and then what I can achieve in my career professionally. And it has to always have a good sounding title, the pay to go with it, the prestige to go with it. All those things, the surface things, are extremely important if you come from a culture that values those things. So you're right. It is very much about the values, the value system of the culture that you're in, the environment that you're in.
So you've now become a trauma-informed sort of introvert coach, because all of this is definitely trauma, because some people might be going through stuff and not realizing that, like you said, a statement that was said when they were 10, they actually took it to heart and it became, their guiding star to who they're becoming, even though it was toxic in the way that it came out. So what specific strategies or processes do you employ to actually guide people on their journey from being quiet achievers to quiet warriors? Because these people are surrounded by the very same people that have been beating them down, so to speak. So how then can they get out of these sort of traumas that are all around them?
So I think there is at least two aspects that we need to look at. One of them is, of course, the trauma you mentioned, and that's joining the dots backwards, looking for the root causes, looking for those initial events that could have the clues as to why someone behaves the way they do and why they hold themselves back and get stuck. And the other is the important thing is the identity that the quiet achiever wants to now embody. And so by the time I speak with them, it's usually because they've been doing some thinking on their own part, some reflecting, and they realize there is a gap. They accept very easily that they are the quiet achiever. But the question is, in some areas of their lives where they are not thriving as much as they could, for instance, professionally or in business or in their relationships, why is that so? And that's because not only do they hold themselves back, they self-sabotage. They procrastinate on delivering important things which are well within their capability, but they keep saying, I can't, because I'm not qualified enough, I'm not good enough, it's not my time yet, I'm too old, I'm too young, and so on. And that's one way to get stuck. And that the root of all that is due to a lack of self-worth, lack of self-esteem, a feeling that whatever I do, I still have to do more. I have to prove myself. And so there's this never-ending quest for perfection, for more knowledge, for more certainty. There is also the aspect of being too attached to wanting to be in control of the circumstances, meaning that if I can't deal with uncertainty because I didn't see it coming, I'm not prepared. I can't deal with this thing that has just shown up on my plate. And so I get overwhelmed, I panic, I get anxious, I start telling myself stories about how I can't, and then it becomes a vicious cycle.
You see, now the thing is, fish do not see the water that they swim in, and neither can we see the air that we breathe. Some people might just see it as normal, because if you're just within that sort of community and that sort of setup, you're seeing it from your neighbors, you're seeing it from your bosses. That's the way they're treating their kids. They're sending their kids to all these extracurricular things just so they can achieve more, be more, have more, or whatever it is that they sort of aspire to. Could you maybe shed a bit of light on sort of the individuals that you aim to assist with what you're now doing right now? That way we can call them out and be like, hey, we can see you're not bringing, the best of what you possibly can. And who exactly are these quiet achievers, and what sort of challenges do they typically face that you help them overcome?
So the quiet achievers I'm talking about, the reason they are achievers is because actually they've already reached a certain level professionally or in their business, or in some area of their life where they've excelled. They could have been always that A student at school who then gets stuck at the age of 35 or 50 because they want to embark on this new direction. They want to change their career. They want to start a business. And the reason they get stuck is because they are coming from a different industry and profession. All their lives, they've been used to a linear kind of progression. If I study, if I clear this, if I get this assignment done, if I get this certification, if I get this accreditation, then I can move on to the next level. And so there is always this reliance on external validation. I need that paper, I need that certificate to prove that I can do this. But not everybody functions this way. Some people just go out and do it and teach themselves and learn by doing. And with the introvert who is a quiet achiever, this is very hard because the results take time to show up. But they are used to always having accelerated academically, always having certainty and control over the outcome. And when they don't have that certainty and control because things happen, things change, things don't work out according to plan, they get all flustered and overwhelmed. So they haven't developed that capacity to respond to change in a way that is healthy and allows them to keep functioning. What they do instead is they turn on themselves. They go inwards. They start thinking, it's not working out because I'm not good enough. It's because I'm too old. It's because other people are smarter than me. It's because I'm not tech savvy enough. Actually, it's not these things. These are all skills that anybody can pick up. And with a certain amount of discipline and focus, you can learn these things. But if you start from that fixed mindset of, I'm always looking back on my past achievements and then looking at this huge thing I want to accomplish, and I can't see the pathway, and it's not being laid out for me in a very predictable, safe, step-by-step way, if it involves a lot of uncertainty, a lot of gray areas, a lot of places where I need to trust my intuition instead of there being clear answers that I can verify, if there's too much emphasis on that need for certainty and accreditation and predictability and control, then there is no room for magic. There is no room for surrender. There is no room for intuition. There's no room for creativity. It's very much all left brain. And that's because they're used to that way of thinking and that way of functioning. But the world is such that it's so complex now. Things change all the time. Even a person who has got a stable, good sounding job can lose that job anytime. And those things are not within our control. So the more important thing about the quiet warrior is being someone who can adapt themselves to changing circumstances, to still be able to thrive, to still be able to find, I can create this space in this complex world. I don't need to understand everything about what's going on, but I trust that I will find the resources, I will find the connections, I will find the people, I will build the network, I will share my talents, and I will show up bravely as myself, even though I don't know everything about it and my knowledge may be imperfect. I still have skills gaps that I can build up. It's more, the focus is where it's important. The the quiet achiever focuses on what they previously achieved and then tries to extrapolate that and use exactly the same conditioning. Whereas a possibility-focused person, a quiet warrior, would be looking at, all right, so I'm stuck on this mountain pass and there's only one way forward. So do I want to go back or do I want to keep going? If I keep going, I may run into a monster. Do I have the equipment to slay this monster? No. Is there something else I can do? Is there a detour? Can I climb over this rock, hide in this cave? Can I get help from this hermit who just happens to live around the corner and something? And so you can't predict what you're going to face on the road. But if you believe that life is for you instead of life happening to you, then you have a very different mindset. You're going forth knowing that there is a lot of uncertainty, but you accept it. You accept that that is part of being in the game. That is part of playing the game. And you're going to trust that you can respond appropriately and elegantly when the time comes. Whereas with achievers, you've been carefully anticipating, going step by step, minimizing as much risk as possible, eliminating it preferably, and just having a very certain, a very clear road. But life doesn't work like that. Sometimes the road disappears. Sometimes you have to go through the marshes, or you have to fall into a little hole, or you have to run into something completely unexpected, something harmful, and you have to face your fears. So it's a question of, can I face the fear and do it anyway? Is there something I can do right now that would help me move one step forward, even though I can't see the rest of the path? I will just trust enough. I have the faith, and I will just take this step that I can see in front of me, and then working it out as you go. It's more about possibilities thinking, whereas previously it was about what have I already achieved and what do I know? So it's a completely different mindset. And that's why it's a journey to get from a quiet achiever to a quiet warrior.
Absolutely. And and I can so see that you need to have a whole different identity, and you need to have a whole different perspective of the way that you're going to be moving. So you highlighted four, if I'm not mistaken, types of people that you particularly enjoy sort of working with, because you can't just show up in the marketplace and be like, you, let's work together, because, so, you know, like you say, it's a journey. Some people may not be subscribed to that sort of way of thinking or that outcome. Can you maybe share with us why these individuals resonate with you, and sort of how your experiences, you know, align with theirs in actually achieving the results that you get for them?
Yes. So, for instance, one category of people who would resonate would be professional migrant women. So, the migrant experience, the idea of being plucked out of your safety, your home environment, your familiar networks, and then rebuilding your life from a new place, questioning your identity, questioning your values, being presented with the opportunity to start over, but at the same time, constantly looking back, being a bit nostalgic, still a bit attached to your old identity and all your old achievements. That journey is very familiar for those people that have been on it or are currently on it. There is this sense of displacement, but also a sense of hope and possibility. It's exciting, but it also feels overwhelming. And so while you're looking forward, there's also some grief and some loss. And with another group, it would be people who have experienced some kind of childhood trauma or conditioning that has stopped them from showing up fully in all areas of their lives. So we talked about, things that parents and authority figures might have said to us in our younger days that became part of our belief system and now become possibly a reason why we are not living up to our potential. So with people who have gone through this trauma, the journey, the hope is that they will find their own healing. They will find the ability to create their own identity, to set boundaries, to learn how to advocate for themselves, to learn how to be their own person comfortably. And for the quiet person, for the introvert, for the empath, the highly sensitive person, this is more about recognizing the power of your environment, So if you are functioning in an extrovert biased culture, then the pressure is there. The social pressure is there for you to conform, to talk more, because people will tell you, you're too quiet. You don't speak up enough. I can't hear your voice. Or they talk over you in meetings and discussions, and so you never get a word in. Or you are busy thinking and trying to frame your thought because you want to say the right thing and you want to say it well. You want to say it beautifully. But other people who think out loud or are in a hurry or just have that kind of a personality where they dominate over everybody else. And they're just quicker to speak up. And they don't care whether what they say is accurate or fully thought out or whether they've considered everything. They will just say what's top of the mind. And so for the introvert in a professional situation, they would feel there is something wrong with them. They just can't get a word in. And so they can't be an influencer. They are not a good leader. They can't get people to see them. They can't get people on board with their ideas and to have that energy to push or to promote themselves. Even that word might trigger them in some way because it feels that it doesn't sit well with their personal values. They are not that kind of person. But if you're an introvert and you're functioning in an extrovert biased culture, you need to learn the ways of the world, the ways of how your culture expects people to thrive. And then think about it. Is there something I need to do to adapt? Do I need to learn some new skills? Do I need to learn to communicate a different way? Or am I just happy to be myself and perhaps show up with a different level of energy to work on my mindset, perhaps, so that I project differently, to learn some confidence strategies, to learn to change my body language so that I come across as someone who is solid, who is certain, who is confident quietly inside myself. And all these things can be learned. It begins with a decision to learn and the awareness that you can change. So I think that is very important for introverts and quiet achievers to realize that they need to make that decision for themselves, that I want to change. I still want to be my introverted self. I value and appreciate my quiet strengths, but I also know that because I am functioning in an extrovert bias culture, there may be things I need to do. Either I need to advocate for myself more, or I need to educate other people more. And you pick your battles. You choose, which one enables you to show yourself up as most authentically and most powerfully. And that's different for each person.
Absolutely. From what I'm gathering and understanding, you literally are representing the idea for other people that you can be, do, and have a happier existence. You just don't have to follow whatever has been subscribed for you, and you can choose your own path, right? But that needs to happen in a position where people can see what's possible. So would you say your role now is to be that lighthouse for those people who do not have that sort of reference point, because if you can't be what you can't see.
That is so true. People need role models. People need to see someone else doing it. And that's when we get most excited because it becomes real for us. We suddenly are able to envision. And I think it's also the way we take on information. So some people may be more hands-on, some people may be more moved by videos and audio and listening, and some people read or they need to see it happen in front of them. And so that depends again on the person and how they take on information. But in terms of role modeling that, I would say, for instance, we have this idea of silence as being something that is awkward if it goes for too long. And so I deal with that concept inside my online meetup community for introverts, where I explain that silence is actually a beautiful thing. And it's something we can learn to get comfortable with. And then I actually demonstrate it. For instance, I don't jump in if the room is silent for a few seconds after I ask a question. I don't hurry people to speak up. And I don't put people in the limelight without permission, because these are all red flags for introverts. And so I'm showing them that, yes, you can have these boundaries, and yes, you can learn to confront existing myths or beliefs in the culture. And this is this is one way to do it, by holding the space for the silence and learning to appreciate that silence.
A lot of people can't do it. And I just wanted to sort of put it out there because, like you said, so many people would want to interject or say something, put filler words just so that it feels like something is happening. And it really needs to come from within. If you can be silent within, then anything else outside won't, affect the inner peace that you have internally. So it is something that a lot of people would find very difficult to come across, because if you're always busy with stuff, doing, achieving, whenever there's now that lull and that silence of nothing happening at that particular moment, it's a very, very difficult thing for people to to endure. Now, what would be the best way that people can start becoming quiet warriors within themselves? What would be the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn, where I'm pretty active, and also my website, which is serenalow.com.au. So I share a lot about my journey and what I see as a framework for the transition, growing from quiet achiever to quiet warrior in there. I think the most important thing also for introverts is to celebrate, to embrace, to acknowledge what's so great about being a quiet person in a very noisy and complicated world. We do need more people who are reflective, who think before they speak, who look at things from all angles, who are able to see the big picture and also attend to the details. So people who are great listeners, people who are empathetic, people who have that compassion and the ability to hold a space for others just by taking a step back and not always being in the spotlight, who make other people look good, for instance. There is a saying by Susan Cain, one of my favorite authors, that everyone shines given the right lighting. So when the lighting is too much on people who are naturally loud and exuberant and confident, the quiet person can feel like they're always in the shadows. They're always overlooked. But that too is a perception. And I think there needs to be this balance and acceptance of, yes, because the culture is conditioned that way. It does seem like the quiet ones are on the fringes, on the edges of things. If you're not happy with that, what would you like to do about it? What's a more empowering space to play in? Can you expand your own comfort zone instead of just saying, I'm an introvert, I can't do public speaking. I'm an introvert, I don't like going to networking events. I'm an introvert and I can't market myself, I can't talk about my business, I don't like to sell myself. So these are all labels or beliefs that we put on ourselves. Nobody's telling us to act like that. And it's not, I would say, it is not a reason to hold back. It's more to do with, can I tune myself into the right frequency, the right radio station? If I don't like the noise from this station, if the music's too loud for me, I go find the classical channel, the jazz channel, or something else, the instrumental, You always have a choice. So I prefer that people take a more empowered approach when it comes to advocating for themselves, becoming a more flourishing version of themselves. It's not about changing who you are. You are perfectly fine as you are designed, as a quiet person. There is a place for all of us in this world. If the table's too small, make it bigger. Create a round table, a table where all kinds of personalities can flourish. And so pick your battles. There's no need to go into victim mode and say, oh, woe is me because I'm an introvert. It's more, I'm an introvert, and that's great. That's just one part of me, one facet of me. There's so much more about me that you don't know yet. And I'm ready to share that with you in a more open, more courageous, more creative way. Why? Not because I want to, get away from this introvert label, but more because I have talents, I have gifts, I have ideas, I have things that I want to contribute. And each of us is doing that. Each of us has a ripple effect on this world. And the quiet voices, particularly, who have been hiding their light, hiding their voices, hiding their stories. It's time for them, for us, to come out and share all these things so that we can add to the collective value and the wisdom in this world.
Fantastic. I'm really excited that we managed to have you on the episode today. Um, Obviously, I will be putting all those links into our notes there so that people can get a hold of you and maybe start on their journey moving forward. But I don't know, Serena, you would maybe be able to comment on this a little bit. In Australia, they have the whole tall poppy syndrome, and it's also prevalent in other cultures where you are advocating for, yeah, be a quiet warrior, be out there, do your thing. Obviously, not to the extent of look at me. But in Australia, it's like, no, everybody stay the same. Nobody talk about their accolades and things of that nature. Doesn't that bring out a bit of conflict, or am I getting confused now with all these concepts?
I know that people normally talk about tall poppy syndrome in Australia, and yes, I don't agree that it's restricted to Australia itself. But even then, if you look at online comments about tall poppies, it's certain that there is a lot more nuance to that. It's not just everybody who is seen as a tall poppy whom others then try to cut down. It's certain kinds of people. And I don't think introverts are in danger any day soon of becoming that kind of a tall poppy, because already they are by nature trying to hide and trying to, stay safe. And so I think the bravest version of a quiet achiever going into quiet warrior would still be far from a tall poppy. A tall poppy would be someone who sticks out. And this is arguable, but if you stick out for the wrong reason because you're constantly drawing attention to yourself and your achievements, then yes, you might trigger that feeling in other people who feel threatened, who think that you are somehow targeting them or making them look less than. But you see, each of us is responsible for how we respond to other people. You can be triggered, but you don't have to respond. You can recognize that you are triggered and then do something about it to regulate your own emotions. So it doesn't mean that just because there is this syndrome that we should all not try to stand out. I think it's a question of, what am I standing out for? What am I wanting to be known for? If my putting myself out there means more people get to be healed, more people get to change their lives or take charge of their own destinies, their future, create a positive ripple effect in their own family dynamics, heal their own generational trauma, then that is a good thing. There's no way we can ever reach a level where we don't offend any single person. I think if we don't offend anyone, it means we're not doing anything.
Absolutely, we're not making any impact at all because so many people have different things and are at different levels of consciousness at any given moment. So there's never going to be the same people at the same time. Now, you did bring about an aspect of role models, and I just really wanted us to conclude this episode, but there's a point where there was a Serena, who was in grade 4 and was told, when you were second, when you came out second place in class, and you were told that, you were not applying yourself or something along those lines. What sort of role model would you have wanted at that particular time, just so that you would have come out the best in that particular situation?
I would have wanted a role model, if you can call it that, a nurturing, encouraging adult who would have come alongside and said, how do you feel actually about coming in second? See, the thing was, it was an assumption that I should always be first. Being first is good. Anything less than first is no good. And that somehow that becomes my identity. So if I'm not first, then I'm not good. So I would have liked the role model to have asked me about my feelings, and then listened to me, and then encouraged me, and not made a big thing about it. So if I had been upset, genuinely upset at coming in second, that person would have encouraged me. If it was something that I wasn't even thinking about and I didn't care that I had come in second, then I would have liked that person to move on to something else fun that we could do together, and just let that little thing become a part of history without dwelling so much on it.
Absolutely. There's so many people that are still hung up on things that were said, either by their community or their parents or their friends at a certain point, and they haven't really grown up into the person that they possibly could have become, just simply because of somebody's opinion at a point in their time. Now, as we near the end of this call or this episode, what sort of advice would you offer to those that are seeking maybe a pathway home to their truest selves? And how can individuals actually navigate all these transitions and create a new future which is actually aligned to their values, despite whatever they've been told in the past?
The first step would be awareness. Be aware of who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you care about. Your values are very important and they change through the seasons of life. So you need to know in this current season of your life, what is most important to you? What's a priority for you? The second thing is to acknowledge how far you've come. A lot of us sort of gloss over our achievements or gloss over the things we've done well, and then we just skip over to the next goal, the next big thing, and we don't take a moment to really reflect. What did it take you to get this far? To draw some kind of line that connects your heart. And so that goes back to awareness. Your heart, your purpose in this life, on this earth, what are you here to do? And what are some ways you can start expressing more of yourself in that way? And the fourth thing would be authenticity. That's to do with showing up as you. So not filtering, not because introverts tend to over filter, not people pleasing, not trying hard to be all things to all men, but simply showing up as this is me. I'm not perfect, but I'm good enough. I like myself. I like my company. I know that there are things I'm not great at, but I can laugh at them. I like myself as a human being. I genuinely do. And so when you accept yourself from that level, that kind of identity where it's regardless of what else anybody's doing out there and what they say to you, it's no longer personal because you know who you are. You know where you belong in this world. You have that solid sense that you're here for a purpose. You're not an accident, and that you can influence your future. There are things you can do today. And the last one I would think is micro actions, micro excellence. So we talk about, all these big goals and smart goals and 10-year goals. I would say pull that back, scale that back, bring that down to a level that feels achievable for you right now. Introverts tend to go into overwhelm and overthinking because, 10 years is a long time. And sometimes we can't visualize what that looks like on a daily level. But if we talk about 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, we can start to visualize more. It's getting it to that level that enables you, motivates you to step out and start doing something. So it could be really small. If you say, it could be like adding 5 minutes to your workout time. It can be adding another 10 seconds to your cold shower routine. It can be drinking one more glass of water. It can be taking one more serving of fruit and veggies. Whatever that looks like for you, don't discount the value of the micro, because it is from the micro that you get to that level where you start compounding and seeing the effects. But if you can consistently show up and say, today I'm going to be 1% better than I was yesterday, I'm going to do a bit more, I'm going to push it a bit more, I'm going to try harder, I'm going to learn a new skill, I'm going to do this thing that I haven't tried before because I want to find out how far I can go. I want to be a different kind of person. Then I think if you start from there where it's achievable, you quickly see the results. And that keeps you going. That gives you the motivation.
I like this. These 5 A's are amazing: awareness, acknowledge, align, authenticity, and take the action that you need to in order for you to have that. I think maybe you're missing one A, which is appreciation or gratitude, because at the end of the day, if you are appreciative of who you are and what it is that you are doing and who you are becoming, everything else takes place. And speaking of appreciation, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Prosper. I appreciate you too. And that was a very, very good catch.
Fantastic. And for those that are watching right now, that concludes our inspiring episode with the magnificent quiet warrior herself, Serena Low. And I really appreciate the time that you've taken to walk us through all of these aspects and your life story as well, because I think, just like we mentioned, we all need role models out there. Your life story, your experience is going to prove as a beacon and as a lighthouse for those that are looking for more out there without them getting themselves out of cultural norms and everything else that comes along with it. And for those that are watching right now, if you resonated with Serena's journey or need any support in transforming from a quiet achiever to a quiet warrior, I recommend that you reach out to her. I will put all those details in the show notes so that you can continue the journey with Serena there. Now, Serena, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and actually guiding us on this journey of yours. And I can't wait to see what you're going to bring about in the future. I think you owe us a book. I can so see the quiet achiever, the quiet warrior book out there on Amazon and in every bookshelf, especially when you're going to the airport.
What an inspiring vision. Thank you for giving me something to aspire to this year.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time today. Until next time, this has been yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I want you to stay inspired. Bye for now.